Marcus Bellamy was a man used to challenges. As a self-made millionaire in the tech world, he had built his fortune by solving problems no one else could. But despite all his success, there was one problem he couldn't fix. His dog, Titan, was a massive Belgian Malinois with sharp eyes and a sharp temper to match. The dog was beautiful but dangerous. Marcus loved him, but no one else dared to get close. For years, Marcus had tried everything. He hired trainers from all over the country, some famous, some mysterious experts who promised miracles. He even sent Titan to a police canine training program, hoping the rigorous discipline would help, but nothing worked. Titan was unpredictable. He barked at visitors, snarled when touched, and refused to follow commands. The dog lived more like a wild animal than a pet. Marcus was frustrated, embarrassed, and at times afraid. One afternoon, after yet another failed training session where Titan had snapped at a well-known behaviorist, Marcus sat alone in his lavish home office. He stared at the dog's empty kennel and wondered if he would ever have a normal life with Titan. In a moment of frustration, and maybe a little desperation, he posted a bold challenge on social media. $1 million to anyone who can calm my dog Titan for 5 straight minutes. It was meant to be a joke, a publicity stunt, but the post exploded. The story went viral overnight. News outlets picked it up. People everywhere were fascinated. How could a dog so wild, so out of control, exist in a millionaire's mansion? The challenge became a sensation. Within days, experts and amateurs from across the country lined up outside Marcus's estate. Trainers, dog lovers, animal behaviorists, and even skeptics showed up. They wanted a chance at the $1 million prize and maybe a chance to prove themselves. Marcus watched with a mix of amusement and doubt. None would succeed. He was sure of it. The first challenger was a soft-spoken woman named Hannah, who specialized in calming techniques using music and touch. She approached Titan with a gentle voice and slow movements. For a moment, it seemed like Titan might calm down. But then he suddenly barked and lunged at her, sending her scrambling back. The crowd gasped. Marcus shook his head. Next, he said. One by one, others tried. A man brought a miniature goat he claimed had magical calming powers. A trainer with a loud whistle attempted commands Titan ignored. A young woman tried to mimic the dog's body language. Each attempt failed spectacularly. Titan barked louder, paced nervously, or hid behind Marcus's legs. It was clear the dog was not just stubborn, he was deeply unsettled. As the days passed, Marcus set up cameras to record every attempt. The videos were shared online, drawing millions of views. People debated what was wrong with Titan. Some said he had been abused. Others speculated he was a highly intelligent dog who simply didn't trust humans. Marcus rarely spoke to reporters. But when he did, he confessed that Titan was the one thing he couldn't control. Yet beneath the spectacle, Marcus felt something else growing hope. Maybe someone out there really could help. But with each failure, that hope faded. The $1 million wager turned into a public embarrassment. Friends warned Marcus to call it off. But he couldn't. Titan was more than a dog. He was his companion, his friend. Marcus needed to believe there was a way forward. Late one night, Marcus sat in the dim light of his study, scrolling through messages from fans and challengers. Among them was a quiet note from a woman named Megan, who mentioned her daughter, Elsie, a little girl with autism, who had a special gift with animals. Marcus almost deleted the message without reading it, but something made him pause. The note said simply, "My daughter doesn't speak much, but she believes she can help Titan. No cameras, no prize, just calm." Marcus leaned back, eyes fixed on the screen. Could this be the answer he was waiting for? Or just another hopeful message lost in the noise? Word spread quickly about Marcus Bellamy's $1 million wager. The internet was buzzing, and soon enough, challengers began arriving from across the country. Each person came with their own theory on how to calm Titan, the wild Belgian Malinois no one could tame. The variety of approaches was as surprising as it was entertaining. On a bright morning, Marcus stood by the grand iron gates of his estate, watching a steady stream of visitors. Some arrived confidently, dressed in professional training gear. Others were less formal: an older man with a guitar, a young woman carrying a basket of herbs, a man in a bright suit with a small goat on a leash. Marcus had seen it all now. He found himself almost amused by the endless parade of hopefuls, but deep down, he remained skeptical. The first challenger of the day was Hannah, a dog trainer who specialized in calming anxious animals through music therapy. She set up a speaker near Titan's kennel and began to play soft classical music, hoping the gentle sounds would soothe the dog's nerves. For a few minutes, Titan seemed less restless, his ears twitching as if listening. But then, as Hannah reached out her hand, Titan snapped fiercely, teeth flashing dangerously. She stepped back quickly, shaken but unharmed. Marcus frowned. It was clear Titan's anxiety ran deeper than Soft Tune's Dot. Next came a man named Paul, who carried the miniature goat, named Lulu. Paul claimed Lulu had a unique ability to calm troubled dogs through her calm presence. As Lulu trotted near Titan, the dog growled and barked loudly, refusing to approach. Paul was undeterred. He knelt, whispering softly to the goat and Titan alike, but the dog's agitation only grew. Marcus watched, frustrated. The goat was cute, but it wasn't the answer. Over the following days, challengers came and went, each with their own method. Some tried intense obedience training with whistles and commands. Others used strange rituals involving crystals, incense, or herbal sprays. Titan's reaction was always the same: barking, pacing, growling, or freezing in fear. It seemed nothing could break through the wall of mistrust the dog had built around himself. The estate staff kept detailed records of every attempt. Marcus had installed dozens of cameras to capture every interaction. The videos were shared online, quickly gaining millions of views. The public became fascinated, not only by Titan's fierce temperament, but by the almost theatrical nature of the challenge. Some viewers cheered for the challengers. Others sympathized with Titan's obvious fear. Dog behavior experts weighed in on social media. Some suggested Titan was suffering from post-traumatic stress, possibly from abuse before Marcus adopted him. Others believed the dog's intelligence made him sensitive to human energy, and that only someone special could connect with him. Marcus read every comment, feeling a strange mixture of hope and despair. The $1 million wager had turned into more than a challenge. It was a public spectacle, a mystery that everyone wanted to solve. But behind the scenes, Marcus struggled with his own feelings. Titan was more than a problem to fix. He was his loyal companion. Seeing the dog suffer broke Marcus's heart in ways money couldn't heal. One evening, after another failed attempt, when a well-known dog behaviorist had left the estate frustrated and shaken, Marcus sat alone in his study. The videos played silently on his computer screen: Titan barking, lunging, refusing to be comforted. Marcus sighed heavily. How could he help a dog that didn't seem to want help? As he scrolled through emails from hopeful challengers and curious viewers, a new message appeared. It was different. The sender was Megan, a mother from a small town hundreds of miles away. Her message was simple, humble, and quiet compared to the chaos Marcus had witnessed. My daughter Elsie doesn't speak much, Megan wrote, but she has a way with animals. She watches your videos of Titan. She says he's not angry. He's scared. She wants to try to help him. No cameras, no prize. Just calm. Marcus stared at the screen. He almost deleted it, thinking it might be another attempt to gain attention. But something about the tone, The gentle confidence in Megan's words caught his attention. He thought about the many failures and how desperate he felt for a breakthrough. Could this quiet little girl be the answer no one else had found? Marcus decided to take a chance. In a small, sunlit house several states away from Marcus Bellamy's sprawling estate, 8-year-old Elsie Ray sat quietly on the living room floor, her legs crossed as she watched a video on the family tablet. The screen showed a large, fierce dog barking and pacing anxiously Titan, the dog everyone was talking about. Beside her mother Megan watched with a mixture of hope and concern. Elsie was unlike most children. Diagnosed with autism at the age of 3, she rarely spoke in public and often preferred the quiet company of animals over people. Words came slowly to her, but her connection to the natural world was deep and unmistakable. She could sense emotions in ways others could not. As the video ended, Elsie's pale blue eyes fixed on the screen. Without hesitation, she leaned forward and softly whispered, "He's not angry. He's scared." Her voice was barely audible, but for Megan, those words hit like a thunderclap. Elsie hadn't spoken a full sentence in weeks. Megan looked down at her daughter, surprised and moved. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" she asked gently. Elsie shrugged slightly, then looked back at the tablet. "He's scared inside, not angry." It was a simple statement, but for Megan, it explained everything she had sensed for years about her daughter's unique ability. Elsie rarely spoke because she saw and felt the world differently. She didn't just watch animals, she listened to them in her own special way. Megan's mind raced. The video of Titan was everywhere online, and Marcus Bellamy's $1 million challenge was a viral sensation. Could it be possible that Elsie's quiet insight held the key to calming the fierce dog? That night, Megan sat at her computer, drafting an email to Marcus. It was short, honest, and without any fanfare. She explained that her daughter had a gift, a way of understanding animals that went beyond words. She asked if Marcus would be willing to let Elsie try. No cameras, no prize money, just quietly. In person. Megan hesitated before sending the message, unsure if anyone would believe her or even read the email. She had no grand expectations. She just wanted to try. Meanwhile, Elsie went about her days in her calm, measured way. She spent hours drawing pictures of animals and quietly observing birds outside the window. Her teachers often said she was in her own world, but Megan knew better. Elsie was simply listening to things most people missed. Days passed without a reply from Marcus. Megan's hope faded, but she didn't mention it to Elsie. Then, unexpectedly, an email appeared in her inbox. Marcus Bellamy had replied. The message was brief but sincere. Marcus admitted he had seen many failed attempts and was skeptical, but he was willing to give Elsie a chance. The invitation was clear. Come to his estate. No cameras, no audience, just a quiet meeting. The news unsettled Megan. Traveling hundreds of miles with a child who thrived on routine was risky. But she knew this opportunity was too important to ignore. On the morning of the visit, Megan prepared carefully. She packed Elsie's favorite drawing pads, a few quiet toys, and snacks. She reminded Elsie to stay calm, but to be herself. They arrived at Marcus's estate. Megan felt a surge of nerves. The grand mansion loomed before them, its gates guarded by staff who eyed them curiously. Titan's barks echoed faintly in the background. Marcus himself met them at the door. He was tall, reserved, and looked exhausted. When Titan spotted the visitors, he snarled sharply, his eyes blazing. Megan tensed, but Elsie remained still. Without a word, she stepped forward slowly, her movements deliberate and calm. She knelt on the polished floor, extending a hand toward Titan. Everyone watched in silence. For a moment, the dog growled low in his throat. Then, something remarkable happened. Titan's body relaxed slightly. He sniffed Elsie's hand then, as if deciding she was no threat. He lowered his head. The room seemed to hold its breath. Elsie did not smile or speak. She simply sat quietly, her hand resting gently on Titan's fur. Marcus felt a mixture of shock and disbelief. Could this small, silent girl really reach the dog no one else could? The moment was fragile, but full of promise. When Megan first sent her email to Marcus Bellamy, she wasn't sure what to expect. She had seen the headlines, the viral videos, the endless parade of challengers trying and failing to calm Titan, the fierce Belgian Malinois. Marcus's challenge had become more than a wager. It was a public spectacle. Many had scoffed at the idea that a quiet little girl with autism could do what professional trainers could not. But Marcus, despite his doubts, had agreed to meet them. He was a man used to control and precision, yet Titan was a wild card no one could tame. The note from Megan touched something deeper, a quiet hope in a sea of frustration. The morning Megan and Elsie arrived at the estate was crisp and bright. The massive gates opened with a heavy creak, and a security guard led them down winding paths lined with manicured hedges. The mansion loomed ahead, grand and imposing. Megan gripped Elsie's hand gently. The little girl's expression was calm, but focused. Inside, the staff moved quickly to prepare. Titan was pacing in the large living room, his muscles tense and eyes alert. Marcus appeared, his sharp gaze fixed on the newcomers. He nodded curtly, but said little. There were no cameras, no reporters, just the quiet tension of an impossible moment. As soon as Titan noticed Elsie, his growl rose sharply. The dog's body stiffened. Marcus held his breath, expecting the usual chaos. But Elsie didn't flinch. Slowly, she stepped forward, eyes locked on the dog's. Her movements were deliberate, steady. She knelt down, extending a pale hand with fingers curled slightly inward, not threatening, but inviting. Titan's growl faltered. He sniffed the air, muscles twitching as if struggling with a decision. For a long moment, no one dared move or speak. Then, almost imperceptibly, Titan lowered his head and inched closer. He placed his massive head on Elsie's lap and closed his eyes. The room exhaled. Marcus felt a shock ripple through him. Years of frustration melted away in that simple act of trust. No commands were given, no treats were offered. Just silence and understanding. Megan watched Elsie carefully. Her daughter's face was unreadable, but her hands moved gently, stroking Titan's fur with a tenderness that seemed to calm the dog further. Marcus finally broke the silence. "How?" he whispered. "How did you do that?" Elsie looked up. Briefly, her eyes meeting his. Then she whispered, "He's scared. I just told him he's safe." Marcus was speechless. Over the next hour, the impossible unfolded. Titan followed Elsie around the room like a loyal shadow. He accepted her touch, allowed her to guide him gently, and even lay down quietly when she sat on the floor. Marcus called in his staff and trainers to witness the change. They, too, were stunned. The dog who had snarled and snapped was now peaceful, almost obedient in a way that wasn't forced, but natural. Later that day, Marcus offered Megan the $1 million prize. He was insistent, almost desperate to reward the miracle he had witnessed. But Megan shook her head. "Elsie didn't do this for money," she said softly. "She just wanted to help." Marcus respected her refusal, but insisted on offering a gift. He gave them an invitation to return any time and promised to support any therapy programs Elsie wanted to explore. As Megan and Elsie left the estate, the weight of what had happened settled over everyone. A silent little girl had done what the best trainers couldn't. The public challenge might have been won, but the real story had only just begun. Marcus found himself thinking about trust, fear, and connection in ways he never had before. was no longer just a problem to fix. He was a living proof of something deeper, an unspoken bond that could heal wounds no money could reach. The atmosphere in Marcus Bellamy's grand living room was thick with tension as Elsie sat quietly on the polished wooden floor. Titan, the massive Belgian Malinois, paced nervously nearby, his eyes darting around the room, muscles taut like coiled springs. Everyone watching held their breath. This was the moment that could either confirm months of failure or shatter all expectations. Marcus, standing beside the wide window, watched with a mixture of hope and skepticism. He had seen dozens of trainers try and fail to calm Titan. None had come close. Yet here was a small, quiet girl who hadn't uttered a word since they arrived. She didn't hold treats, she didn't bark commands, and she didn't carry any equipment. She simply sat. Slowly, Elsie extended a hand toward Titan, palm up, fingers curled gently in a soft invitation. A dog growled softly, his body stiffening, as if warning her to stay away. The room was silent, except for the faint ticking of the antique clock on the mantelpiece. Then, in a moment that seemed suspended in time, Titan took a single cautious step toward Elsie. He lowered his massive head and sniffed her hand. His muscles relaxed slightly. The growl softened to a quiet whimper. Elsie's hand remained steady, her touch light as feathers. 5 minutes passed. No bark, no snap, no lunge. The impossible was happening. Marcus felt his heart race. He glanced around at the gathered trainers and staff, who stared in disbelief. Phones were raised quietly to capture the moment, but Elsie didn't notice or care. She simply whispered something so softly that only Titan could hear. The dog's eyes closed, and he settled beside her, resting his head in her lap. Titan, the untouchable beast who had terrified so many, was calm, at peace, trusting. 10 minutes passed. 15. Titan shifted slightly, but stayed close. Elsie's fingers traced gentle patterns on his fur. Marcus's mind reeled. The stubborn, aggressive dog was showing signs of something he hadn't displayed in months' trust. For years, Marcus had tried to control Titan with commands and discipline. Now, he realized it was something else Titan needed. Not control, connection. Room remained quiet, the only sound the soft rustle of Elsie's clothing as she moved gently. No one dared speak or move too quickly. The fragile peace could shatter with the slightest disturbance. After 20 minutes, Marcus finally broke the silence, his voice barely a whisper. "How are you doing this?" Elsie looked up at him, her eyes calm but filled with a quiet certainty. "He's not angry," she said simply. "He's scared." I told him it's okay to trust. Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. It wasn't just the dog that needed healing. It was everything Titan represented: fear, pain, hope, and love. Staff slowly gathered around, some wiping their eyes. Trainers who had once been competitive now looked humbled. They had learned something that day, not just about Titan, but about the power of patience, empathy, and understanding. As the afternoon faded into evening, Marcus sat beside Elsie. Titan, the dog, rested his head on Marcus's knee, his body relaxed and still. Marcus reached out and stroked Titan's fur, feeling a bond that went deeper than any training session. That night, Marcus sent messages to his closest friends and business partners, telling them about the miracle he had witnessed. But he knew. The real miracle was silent, a little girl with autism who had shown that sometimes the greatest strength lies in quiet understanding. Elsie didn't seek praise or attention. She returned to her calm world, having given Titan something no one else could: trust. And Marcus, watching the dog who once seemed impossible to calm, realized that sometimes the greatest challenges are solved not with money or force, but with a quiet heart. The days after Elsie's first visit to Marcus Bellamy's estate were unlike anything anyone expected. Titan, the once unruly Belgian Malinois, had changed in ways that baffled even the most experienced trainers. He was calmer, more relaxed, and most remarkably, he responded only to Elsie's presence. Marcus watched with growing amazement as the dog followed Elsie quietly around the estate during her visits. The massive dog, who once snarled at every new face, now stayed close to her side, his body language peaceful and trusting. It was as if a deep, invisible bond had formed between the two, one that no one could fully understand. During one afternoon visit, Marcus observed Elsie sitting beneath an ancient oak tree, Titan lying curled at her feet. The sun filtered softly through the leaves, casting a golden glow over the scene. The quiet girl didn't speak much, but her eyes held a serene focus, and the dog seemed completely at ease. Marcus had invited several of the trainers who had failed to calm Titan before to watch. They gathered at a respectful distance, whispers filling the air. Many admitted they were skeptical at first, but none could deny the transformation before their eyes. One trainer, a grizzled veteran named Harold, approached Marcus quietly. "I've worked with dogs for over 20 years, he said, "but I've never seen anything like this. Titan isn't just calm, he's connected," Marcus nodded. "It's like they understand each other without words." It was true. Elsie didn't give commands or issue corrections. She simply moved with quiet intention, and Titan responded as if reading her thoughts. When she reached out her hand, he nuzzled it gently. When she stood up, he rose too, his tail wagging softly. Behind the scenes, Marcus began to reflect on his own life. He'd always prided himself on control and precision. His empire was built on sharp decisions and calculated risks. But here was Titan, a dog who taught him something far more important: patience and trust. Elsie's presence had a calming effect on more than just the dog. Marcus found himself visiting his estate more often, spending time watching the quiet girl and the peaceful dog. He noticed changes in himself. He smiled more, listened more, and began opening up to people he had once kept at arm's length. Meanwhile, Elsie's mother Megan was cautiously optimistic. She had watched her daughter blossom quietly over the past months. Elsie still preferred solitude, but there was a new confidence in her eyes when she was with Titan. One day, Megan found Elsie drawing in her notebook. The picture was simple: a large dog lying calmly beside a small girl. Beneath it were the words, "He's not broken. He was just waiting." Megan's heart swelled with pride. Elsie had found a way to help a creature no one else could reach. It was a gift beyond words. News of Titan's transformation spread quietly at first. Marcus shared a few stories with close friends and colleagues, but he wasn't interested in fame or accolades. What mattered was the bond, the silent understanding that had healed both dog and girl. Together, Elsie and Titan became inseparable. They went on walks through the estate's gardens, played in the open fields, and spent afternoons simply sitting side by side. Titan's once restless energy was replaced with calm companionship. Marcus knew that what Elsie had done was rare, perhaps even miraculous, but it wasn't magic or trickery. It was something deeper: empathy, patience, and a willingness to listen without judgment. In a world that often prized noise and attention, Elsie's quiet heart had made all the difference. The transformation of Titan was not the only thing changing in Marcus Bellamy's world. As the dog grew calmer and more trusting under Elsie's gentle care, Marcus himself began to experience a quiet but profound shift. For years, Marcus had built walls around his life, walls made of wealth, success, and careful distance. His reputation as a hard-edged businessman meant few people truly knew him. But watching Elsie with Titan stirred something inside him. The boyish smile that occasionally broke through his usually serious expression was a sign of softening. A sign that he was opening up in ways he hadn't expected. Elsie's visits became a steady rhythm in Marcus's life. The once lonely mansion echoed less with silence and more with the soft sounds of companionship. Titan, once restless and wild, now lay calmly at Marcus's feet as Elsie sat nearby. Reading or quietly drawing. Marcus invited Megan and Elsie to stay longer during each visit, eager to learn from the little girl who had done the impossible. He began to ask questions, not about business or technology, but about Elsie's world, her thoughts, her experiences, and how she connected with animals in ways others could not. Megan, initially cautious, found herself warming to Marcus. She saw the genuine change in him, the way he listened and tried to understand. It was a rare kindness, and it made her hopeful for the future. One afternoon, Marcus took Elsie and Megan on a walk through the sprawling gardens. Titan trotted happily beside them, his tail wagging freely. The sun was warm, and the scent of blooming flowers filled the air. As they walked, Marcus shared a story from his childhood about a dog he had once loved but lost. His voice was softer than usual, touched with memory and loss. Elsie listened intently but said little. Instead, she reached out and gently touched Titan's fur. Marcus watched her and felt a deep gratitude. This small, quiet girl had not only changed his dog, but had also helped change him. Inspired by what he had witnessed, Marcus decided to do something bigger. He announced plans to launch a foundation dedicated to supporting animal-assisted therapy for children with autism and other special needs. The project would provide funding for programs, pairing gentle dogs with children who needed them most. He named it the Elsie Project, honoring the little girl whose quiet courage had inspired the change. The news spread quickly, but Elsie stayed out of the spotlight. She preferred the quiet comfort of home and the gentle presence of Titan. Her work was done in silence and kindness, not for fame or applause. For Marcus, the foundation was more than a business venture. It was a promise, a way to give back, to honor the bond that had transformed his life and Titan's. At a gala event for the foundation, Marcus stood before a crowd of supporters and told the story of Titan and Elsie. His voice was steady, but filled with emotion. He spoke of fear, trust, and the healing power of connection. The audience listened, many moved to tears. But for Marcus, the real story was not in the speech. It was in the quiet moments when Elsie sat with Titan, when the dog looked up at her with trust in his eyes, and when Marcus felt, for the first time in years, that he was truly part of something meaningful. Together, the trio, man, girl, and dog, had begun a new chapter. One filled with hope, healing, and a kind of love that doesn't need words. Months had passed since Elsie's first quiet steps into Marcus Bellamy's world. In that time, the lives of all three, Marcus, Elsie, and Titan, had been transformed in ways no one could have predicted. The $1 million wager that once seemed like a publicity stunt had blossomed into something far greater. A story of hope, trust, and healing. Marcus's foundation, the Elsie Project, was gaining momentum. Grants were awarded, programs launched, and families across the country were beginning to see the benefits of pairing therapy. Animals with children on the autism spectrum. Marcus remained a committed advocate, but he never lost sight of the humble beginning. A quiet girl who refused the spotlight. Elsie, true to herself, stayed mostly out of the public eye. She didn't seek recognition or applause. Instead, she continued her quiet life, filled with drawings, gentle walks with Titan, and moments of peaceful connection. Those who knew her spoke of a special light in her eyes, a calm presence that touched everyone she met. Titan had become more than just a dog. He was a symbol of patience, understanding, and the power of kindness. His story was told and retold in therapy centers, schools, and community events. Children who struggled to express themselves found inspiration in the bond between Elsie and Titan. Marcus often reflected on how much he had learned from the experience. He had started with a wager, driven by frustration and pride. But what he gained was far beyond money or fame. He gained perspective. He learned that some battles are won not with force, but with quiet hearts and open minds. One afternoon, Marcus invited Megan and Elsie back to the estate for a small celebration. As they walked through the gardens, Titan trotted happily beside them, his tail wagging gently. Elsie carried a new drawing, her gift to Marcus a simple sketch of a girl and a dog, sitting side by side under a tree dot at the bottom. Elsie had written in her careful handwriting, "Together we found peace." Marcus smiled, feeling a deep gratitude that words could not capture. He knelt down to hug Elsie gently, feeling the warmth of a bond that had changed everything. The legend of Elsie and Titan was not just a story about a wild dog and a quiet girl. It was a story about the unexpected ways healing can come, about how trust can bridge the widest gaps, and how sometimes the smallest voices carry the greatest power. As the sun set over the estate, casting long shadows across the lawn, Marcus knew one thing for certain. The $1,000,000 wager was never about money. It was about hope. And hope, he realized, was priceless.